I generally feel if you can make it work and you've really got the passion and you've really got the energy, just take the risk and do it.
Welcome to While She Builds, the podcast for professionals in their 20s and 30s who want to think like founders and challenge the road to a traditional corporate ladder. Whether you are building your own business, growing your career, or doing a bit of both, this is about seeing yourself on the front seat of your own career and using your corporate experience as a launch pad for bigger things. Every episode, we sit down with real founders who have either made the shift or are embracing this journey that we call life. My mission is simple, that you leave this episode with at least one action that you can take through the frameworks, insights, and tools being discussed in the episodes forward. My name is Himani, a hybrid athlete and a supply chain manager at a global Fortune 500 company. My philosophy is as simple as it seems. Life is an experiment, and growth comes from staying flexible and learning as you go. Today, I'm joined by someone who has been on both sides of the corporate bridge. Whether it's being in the world's biggest companies and now building his own thing with intention and courage. Welcome to Karan. Karan Kapoor founded Vividh, a consultancy built around a pretty bold idea that inclusion should be a part of how a business operates, not a slide that somebody flashes at an annual conference. His founder story is born from his own lived experience, watching companies invest in programs that never change the day-to-day reality and deciding to build something that does. Karan and me go way back from May 2023 when we first met.
Yep.
And I know back then when hearing about your journey, hence going into the introduction about yourself, you've worked a variety of roles in corporate and multiple places to begin before I met you, because you mentioned this to me in conversation. And then you had mentioned also the different type of roles that you've managed, from program management, project management, to now being in HR and now having Vividh, which is a consultancy about advocating for inclusive leadership and also helping organizations in paving their way forward with the board, right? So Karan, I've spoken too much about you, but I want to hear from you. And then we go into a little bit about your journey, our journey together when we met. So if someone was seeing you for the first time, which most people are, who are you?
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. So yes, I'm Karan. I created Vividh, which is an inclusion consultancy company. We do a lot of things in that space, but that's what I created recently, about 2.5 years ago. But mostly I've been doing a lot of program project management roles, mostly in corporates, big corporates, mostly into foods and everything else you can think of, gaming, you name it, I've probably attacked it. So it's been a really great journey. I've had a very different type of career, different roles, different functions, not just in HR. I've done IT, I've done supply chain, I've done HR, I've done merger acquisitions, you name it, I've probably touched on it somewhere. So yeah, I would say that's me in a nutshell, really.
That's really nice, because the minute you mention this now, it's also making me remember about how you introduced yourself when we were speaking many years ago back then. And I just remember thinking, wow, this guy has put a lot of eggs in multiple baskets, which gives him the skills to start building something of meaning. Before we even go to that, I think it's good to take the listeners through that journey of a few years ago when we met. And what captivated me about our conversation is when I was still not a manager back then, or just getting the grips into being a manager in my own function. You were sharing with me a little bit about what you were already doing for the company that you're working with in the space of HR. And I then remember how we connected over, especially I Am Remarkable, which is about how you can help support women and people from underrepresented groups with developing the skill and the muscle of self-promotion, which is so important nowadays, especially if you need to go up the corporate ladder, or not even necessarily corporate ladder, your own ladder, whichever journey that may be. And probably I'll start with a little bit of peeling those layers, which you said you've done a lot of experiences. So Karan, you were in HR back then when we met, and that's how our conversations took off. But then was it always that you were in HR? Where did your story begin?
The story began in so many different ways. I would say first started with IT. So I came out of university with an IT degree. I went into IT because I was really fascinated about how technology is and how it connects to everything. Falling into IT, I went into kind of like a business analyst role, which is something that's basically you're getting requirements and then merging them into something that's more readable and more understandable to someone that doesn't speak technical language. But then I really enjoyed like the project management side of things and how do you organize, structure, bring together, stakeholder manage, and really build a team basically to deliver something that's a product or something that you're getting an end goal towards. So that's where it started. And then as I was moving forward and forward in my career, and as I was looking for new opportunities, every new opportunity was always about the money of the project. So from the scalability of thousands to millions. And it was how do I go from a thousands project to a million project? And that's what really drove me a lot of the time. So I was then looking for those big projects, those big organizations for the first entry. But then actually then just beautifully, I just had opportunities come my way naturally. So without applying for anything, mostly headhunted, which is I'm quite blessed and grateful for. Those were the roles I was just getting towards IT. So that's the IT world. And then after about 6 years or so after doing IT, I was like, is there more to me than IT? What else could I do in a space? What could I learn from stuff? Then an organization came and asked me to be a supply chain program manager. And then I fell into supply chain, no IT, nothing at all. But the theme that I had was project management, program management, project management was the theme I had. So the skill sets were there. It was just learning a new area. So I was like, that's easy. We can learn a new area. The skill sets is the foundation of anything. So then I fell into that and luckily successfully delivered a lot of projects into that space. Then the HR world came in my world where they were looking for an inclusion manager. No idea what really HR was all about because I never had HR experience. I then fell into HR in this role because of the program project management experience that I had. And it's actually at that point when I realized my passion in inclusion and the impact I can have through people and and just the longevity of making someone feel like they belong. And that's something we connected on when we first spoke was about how do we make people feel like they belong.
Correct.
And I think that's what then went into that space. And then I then really fell into it and just loved everything about inclusion and the belonging of stuff. And I think it was more than just inclusion. It was making people feel like they belong. And I was really passionate about that.
Karan, I love that. I picked up a few things that you mentioned there, right? So you mentioned how the opportunities came to you
Hmm.
over the time when you were in IT and then went into supply chain, and then how there was an underlying theme of the skill set. That's the word that you
Hmm.
used. But now that I speak to you and reflecting on when we met, I think there's a certain sense of luck,
Yeah.
but that luck is also through the personality that you are. And I always mention in this podcast that we have that we're creating value for the people that are listening to this. So one lesson, if you agree with me, that is there is that your luck, there's a certain sense of luck, there's a certain sense of hard
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
there is a certain sense of the person that you are and how you are approachable enough to be able to attract those opportunities to you. And that also means being positive. And for me, the first word that strikes out is your charisma.
Oh,
Like from
nice.
day one,
Right.
you've had such a high energy and frequency, like you would attract people in your conversations. So yes, there might be a certain sense of luck, which I don't absolutely deny.
Yeah.
But I also think that you have to credit yourself to you being approachable and you having that charismatic personality to allow those opportunities to be invited to you.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's really sweet. And that is a theme that I hear a lot of is my charisma. It's very difficult to self-reflect on yourself at times, but it is really sweet to hear those kind of feedback. And you're so right. I think there is a lot of things that happen with a bit of luck needs to be on your side to get these opportunities, of course. But then I also feel actually the harder you work, the more I'm very goal orientated. I'm very driven. I always had a plan. This is what it's got to look like. So I was achieving that. And so it was, yeah, some form of luck. Yeah. So, I mean, the opportunities I would call was probably luck. The fact that inclusion came my way, no idea what that really was, but then found what I was looking for all my life. I think that's where that came from. That might have been a bit of luck and a bit of hard work, but mostly that just was an opportunity that came. But yeah, you're
Yes.
so right. I think it's definitely the hard work part and the luck part that needs to somewhat balance at times. Yeah.
Balance it out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you mentioned your journey up until when you found your love for
Yeah.
inclusive leadership, but mainly in the space of HR,
Yeah.
because inclusive leadership is something that you are doing now. So help us now fill that gap in the middle. So you were in corporate all this while navigating your way through these different roles
Hmm.
with the theme of the skill sets that you've built over time and then finding your way through that. It felt like everything was working for you. What happened that made you think, no, wait, probably corporate is not the trajectory I want to take anymore, but I need to go towards the side of Vivid? Take
Yeah.
us through that journey.
I think there was two things that came through my mind. So one was I've always been ambitious to create my own and have my own business. That was definitely one thing which I've always dreamt of in my life, and that was something I wanted. And then when it was the inclusion stuff, so having been program and project manager and so forth, and the stakeholder management that you have to do, the kind of hierarchical dynamics you have to deal with, the politics you need to work on, everything on that space of like how do you make a project actually succeed, getting teams to work well together, all that stuff. Sometimes I felt when I was working in organizations, inclusion was just, or belonging, I'm not even going to say inclusion, I'm going to just say belonging. Belonging was just buzzwords, and it was something that no one really felt they needed to be part of. And it was nice on a slide, it was nice on a door, it was nice on a frame, but actually in the real work of stuff and how people actually felt like they're part of a journey, it was always lacking. And I think when I was more and more in the inclusion world, because I know inclusion falls under HR, but actually it's not HR, it's everyone. Inclusion fits in everything, right? So inclusion is in HR, it's in finance, it's in marketing, it's in every function of the organization. It's inclusion. So, and everyone needs to feel like they belong. There's not any function that doesn't feel like they shouldn't belong. So it falls under HR for some reason, and I think because it's people related. But realistically, it's the organization's being. Any organization with people in it will need to feel like they belong. I then realized the more and more I was doing stuff on the belonging side and inclusion side, it wasn't sticking and wasn't landing. And it was like, why? Why is it not sticking? Why is it not landing? The authenticness of it was what I think was lacking. And actually, the realism of what inclusion and belonging is about was also lacking. So it's like, how did I push that? How can I push that narrative outside of the corporate world, being me? Being Karan and being into space or going to speak to people and
Yes.
making it very easy for people to understand what it is. That's what I thought I can do, and that's why I did what I did. And I felt that was my USP per se, was to go in and talk about it in a very realistic, normal way of talking about how to belong.
I'm curious to know a specific example
Hmm.
where you realized that what you are doing from a project basis was not working and sticking.
Hmm.
And then an example of what you're doing differently in Vivid today that is working.
So I would say I was working in an organization where we were trying to lead loads of C-suite level and their direct reports into doing more for inclusion and how they can become more available to those individuals to come and feel like they've got a safe space and all that stuff that they do within belonging. The more and more we were conversating in that space and pushing a narrative, it was literally just pushing a narrative. Actually, the more and more we're pushing this narrative, the less and less they're believing it. Yes, they're doing the tick boxing, they're hiring, they're doing the training, they're getting the coaching, we'll say, but they're not moving the dial. Everything's the same because realistically, they're behaving the same because they don't believe in it. And I think when you're in an organization and you're internal in an organization, it's sometimes challenging to work on the dynamics and the politics to really make that shift. Then Vivid enters. And then when Vivid came about, I have a narrative now that this is what I believe in. This is my organization's belief in what we need to do moving forward. So when now we're having a conversation, there's no politics between you and I. This is what you have to do. This is what my organization helps you do to get better. So for me then to change the narrative and make an impact, that's how I made an impact. So now when I look at Vivid, and a really great example with some of my clients is who I coach the C-suite level and their direct reports, I'm seeing a narrative and a change genuinely in them because they're making that shift and narrative within the way they work, because they're learning from it. They're trying to really push that positive action to make a difference. That's the difference I see now, which I didn't see when I was internal in a corporate.
Can I then understand
Yeah.
for my own learning, but also for anybody listening to this, right? Is it that when you are trying to scale a big initiative that involves a sort of an emotional or psychological change, that it involves a lot of education as the base before there is any kind of campaigning done around that? Is that something
It's
that
a
works
really
for
good
Vivid?
question, because actually, what kind of education can you bring someone that needs to feel like they belong, right? It's like
Oh, yeah.
that's a normal feeling. It should be like, I didn't need to educate someone. This is
Yeah.
what belonging is. It's a
Yes.
normal thing. And it's how we've kind of misconceptions, biases, whatever you want to call them, that have been in us since we were kids, and our heritage and all that stuff. They're the kind of things that bring you as that person that you are as today. So it's actually what it is. I wouldn't say education, it's actually relearning empathy. How do you work with the empathy to understand what can you do to be different? And how can you look at someone or look at a situation in a different lens than the lens you're used to? So I wouldn't say it's foundational education, but I would definitely say it's it's more in understanding you as an individual to make that change.
That's very interesting because now immediately my thoughts go on. Here you have built Vivid
Yeah.
out of a value that you think is an opportunity that you can create for companies in house or otherwise who are not yet doing it or can do better in this game, right? And by game, I mean the culture and creating that culture. As I understand, there's also a certain skill set, there's a certain set of experience that you've brought into building Vivid. But I also want to understand if you take that out. Now, there's Vivid, you take out the skills that you bring, the behaviors that are there around, the values that you create and encompass for Vivid. And you're bringing you as Karan, your identity. Someone who is of a brown skin, who's been raised in UK in a different area from where his ancestry is from. What of that Karan also saw a fire to build Vivid?
That's a really good question. So I think it's always since I suppose we were kids, we've always been pushed to achieve and really prove that we belong, and we are the ones that are moving that dial forward. And really, have a hard skin, do really good work, really push yourself to deliver, aim for the best, and that's what's embedded in me always, and that's what I will give my parents a lot of shout out towards, because without that foundation of success and how to build it, I wouldn't be anywhere today as I am today. But I would say the fire definitely comes from, and you're right, there could be a lot of proving that needs to, there is probably a lot of proving in me that I want to prove to everyone that I can do and achieve things. I think that, but I don't think that's a bad thing. There's a reflection on it where you could say, oh, actually, why are you trying to prove for everyone? You should prove yourself. Yes, I am
Right.
still trying to prove for myself, but there's also a little bit of fire saying, yeah, I can achieve and I can do. At school, I suppose this is where it actually becomes more beautiful about the story. I would say for myself and my fire at school, my deputy head teacher, when I got my A levels, told me, "You're not going to go anywhere. Just go get a job." That's what he said to me, exactly in those words. And that moment in time, I was like, no, 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 I'm going to prove you wrong, wrongfully or rightfully. I don't know if that was the right thing to do. But at that moment in time, I was like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong, that I can become something and I can do something and I can achieve something. And then the more and more that fire drove into me, and then I went to university, and then the whole thing changed. My whole dynamic of thinking and everything changed because my fire changed. And that's where I think Vivid has been really, that's where the fire's come from, to be honest. And I think it's grown ever since. And that's why when I was talking, I was very methodical in my moves. I was very like, okay, we need to do this, then we need to do that, then we need to do that. I knew that's what I wanted to achieve. So for me, that's why I think it was the case.
That's beautiful. My reflection of this, of my own journey, is that there's always something linked to your childhood. And that story
Yeah.
that you have in your childhood is what propels you a little bit forward. And by little bit forward is that, yes, there are certain things that you've built and accumulated over time But then that innate fire that you had as a kid, essentially, we go back to those raw emotions and those raw states of being, right? I think of it even hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
What do we want the most?
Yeah.
Yes, there are some people who are driven by putting food on the table for their families.
Yeah.
There are some people who are driven by wanting to feel like they've done something.
How about yourself, actually? So now when you're thinking about what you're trying to achieve and what you're doing, what's driving you to do that?
For me, to be honest, the reason that we are having this conversation here, as we would have done otherwise without mics, right, about this,
for sure.
is I always think about what is something that I can learn from a person sitting next to me, and how beautiful would it be if that person is my friend or somebody that I know very, very well. Now, I definitely classify you as a friend given the conversations that we've had, but it's not even necessarily friend, it's anybody.
Yeah.
But I've thought in so many multiple instances, wow, this conversation that I'm having with X person, with Karan in 2024 about this topic, what if someone else could have heard this, and if they're in that journey, they could have done something about it? What I try to do actively in my own circle is that if I find a way that I can potentially help someone by knowing somebody else who's in the same field who could probably help them, I'll connect. I'm not looking to get any personal gain out of it. The only thing that I hope for and pray for is that it helps somebody else. Because truly, truly, I see that whatever energy that you give out, and money and energy, it always comes back at you. It's a circle of life. The more you restrict, that's time, that's information, that's value, you're not going to get it back. You need to let it flow so that it flows back to you. So then I think about, if there's something that I could have learned from this conversation that I'm having with X person, how cool would it be that someone else who really needs this could hear this and do something about it?
Yeah.
And that's essentially why I decided to create this, because number one, I love having conversations. Number two, I love asking questions, a lot of them, because I think that it activates my state of thinking and state of mind and makes me be active to learn from you, but also somebody else might get something out of this.
I think that's exactly, when I first met you, I think that's exactly what I got from that same vibe that you're saying now. I would say when we first met, I found you very curious. You were very open to understand, why are you doing that? And why is that the case? And then also when you were doing the remarkable thing, the passion you had about supporting and helping others came across beautifully. And now that's how, I suppose, how we connected and how we became friends is on that kind of way of actually saying, actually, there's a beautiful way that you want to support and help, and you don't want to just restrict. And that's beautiful. I love hearing that.
Thank you very much for that. For me, what I always think about when I think about the both of us is that we're driven towards that common mission or that common vision of how we can be the best for people around us in whatever way that is, right? But then coming to the journey that Vividh is helping for that.
Yeah.
So is this the first time then that you're founding a company, number one? Or is it the first time that you're founding or showing founding behaviors? Or have you done that before? Help me through that journey itself. Because for me, this podcast is about how somebody is on their journey of entrepreneurship and wants to take it a scale further through the lessons of people who have been there before or are in the midst of transitioning through. So help us understand, how did you transition through and what helped you there?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question, because actually I was quite risk averse, I would say. So I did dabble a little bit beforehand. And when I was at school, I negotiated with my head teacher to get a space to sell sweets, which I had to pay rent for. And so, I was brilliant. The Tesco was right next to me. I would literally buy sweets. There's a UK supermarket for those listening internationally. I'd buy sweets. I'll buy the packet. I'll sell each sweet for like 20, 50p or whatever. I bought the packet for like £1. And I would make money from it. And it was busy because people want sweets at lunch. Of course they do. And then we had a school dance that brought loads of people in, and it was beautiful. So I feel like that's where I felt and I won the Young Enterprise Award, all that stuff in that space. And I loved it because that brought the fire of entrepreneurship. I wanted to do a sweet business because I wanted to, I did a cupcake business, to be honest. There was a recession in the UK at that space, and I was trying to make money. I was working part-time at Boots as a student job. And I was like, right, I was applying for jobs to get into corporate ladder. That was difficult. It took me about 8 months. I was like, I can't just sit here. We've got to do something else. So I started a cupcake business. And so I started making cupcakes, which was quite fun. But that obviously bored my energy out. So I was like, I can't do this anymore. Too much work. It was too hard. And then I started a sweet business. I was starting to start looking at sweet manufacturers, started getting all the logos in, blah, blah, blah. But then the cost of import and export became a lot higher because of something that happened in the UK. And then that kind of stopped that plan. Again, that was showing me a bit of risk adverseness because I didn't want to take the leap. I didn't want to take the risk. So I stopped and backed away from it. So I thought, okay, no, let's walk away. Then this one came. So Vividh then entered my life, and Vividh really entered my life because I think I was running away from something, a situation which I was really unhappy with. And it was like, I'm not going to be in a situation or be part of something which I'm really unhappy with and having no say in what I can do in my career. And I think that was the final straw for me, was like, actually, I think I can do this. I think I can put my money on myself and say, let's go, let's try it, let's see what happens. Let's build a business plan, let's start from scratch, let's network, let's learn, let's do what I'm really good at and really enjoy, is starting from scratch and learning from people and being curious. And so I did all of that, and I loved it, and I think that's where it got me to. And that's the really thing, was I was in a situation, I wanted to get out of that situation. I wanted it to be on my terms and the way I want to get out of something, and that was where it pushed me to build Vividh, and I love it. I love that situation that I was in, because without that situation, I would never have built Vividh. And that, I can't thank that situation. Yes, it was a really bad situation to be in at the time, but I can't thank that situation enough, because I wouldn't have built what I've done. On reflection, I'm really happy that happened to me, because I built something beautiful from it.
My reflection of hearing you
Mm-hmm.
is that there are certain skills that you learn through different experiences of
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
and those skills can come to use. It's
Mm-hmm.
just up to you as to going through your own bouts of reflection and learning when to pull the levers. Like for you, uh, being a child and doing those few things, negotiating with the deputy headmaster, running your sweets counter and stall with your young entrepreneurship club, you said, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Really helps. And then the second reflection that I have of this is, you might be going through a tough time, but it's up to you to do something about it. Come back better or come back stronger. So help me a little bit more now that you founded Vividh. So as I understand from our conversation, because we were in touch with when you were starting
Yeah.
it and after,
Yeah.
I remember you had started it around
Yeah.
2024,
Yeah.
right? If I can give you a rapid fire round and help me and everybody around us understand 4 different things or areas where you have created value,
Mm-hmm.
either for yourself or a business, after starting Vividh, what would that be?
That's a really strong question, because value could be measured in so many different ways. First thing I would say is, I learnt impact. I say impact because, and a value that I've given myself and others, because impact is not only the way we make people feel, is how we also share knowledge and share ideas. And I think impact is from there. So I think that's definitely one. Another value, which I could say, and could be a second one, would be, I know I don't say this myself, but I've been told this: inspiration. And I don't think I'm inspiring in any way.
Karan, that is so false. And you know exactly why, right? With the nugget you shared with me right before this. So we'll get to that.
But for me to call myself inspiring, I think is a bit weird. But but it's been in the sense of like taking a leap of something and giving people something that they feel they can do as well. I think that's really cool, because I've helped a lot of founders and a lot of people that have started their business. I've given a lot of advice, and I've given a lot of guidance to those individuals, without, just because I knew that when I started, I didn't really have anything like that. And I know that when other people were starting, I was like, look, how can I help you with your journey? Because I know I also struggled with it. So I think that was really cool. So that's been a word that's been used a lot with me, which has been really sweet, and I'm super grateful for it. The other two I would say is, I would also say visionary. So when I say visionary, it's quite an interesting one, because when I think about project and program management, I'm very strategic, and I'm very, I am naturally, you become strategic as well. You see the end goal, you see a bit more than the end goal. I think when I'm having conversations with people, I create that, what is more, what's the value add, what are we adding on top of this? And it's that vision I provide and give, and others give me too. So I think that's definitely a third one. Fourth one, that's a struggle. Fourth one, I would say for myself, a value that I've learned is the power of networking and the value you get from networking. And I remember when I first, and the reason why I say this is I remember when I went, and my amazing friend who I spoke to before going to this networking event, I was like, I really don't want to go because there's going to be so many people there. I'm so nervous. What am I going to talk about? I've just started the business. What do we do? In a network, I never networked before for purpose for myself. I've networked to, connect as a corporate and, network about a project. You talk about this topic because it's all work related, but I've got no connection to these work related topics. And it's now just random people you're meeting and building a network and connection from. And my friend told me, I want you to walk out there with 20 people that you can remember or just know their name. And from that is where I went and did it. And from there, I've never looked back. And I love networking now. I think it's so much fun. You get to learn about people. And it's not just about business, it's I learn about people. And I'm not back to what I love to do, which is being curious about people and what they are and how they are today and why they're doing what they're doing, their purpose, their values. Yeah, I think that's definitely one thing I learned.
The reason I asked this question specifically to you
Yeah.
is because you are operating and running a consultancy for people where metrics for D&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, usually it's very hard to track these metrics. They're people oriented. Not every organization must know them. And I'm sure that something that you do is educate around the right metrics to track.
Yeah.
So I specifically asked you this question because value is hard to measure in these spaces.
Yeah.
So it's more for the audiences also to understand, number one, that value can be anything, the way that you can show the worth of or the difference that you're creating. And no, it's not necessarily number driven. And yes, value can be created in any kind of business.
Yep.
So I think I'll summarize what you say in an acronym, all these 4 points. And I've already put an acronym as notes for anyone listening. VVIP, right?
Yeah.
So you said the impact that one can create in many ways where it's hard to measure is how bold are your ideas, so how visionary they are, what is the value that your own network is creating and building for you and your business? What is the impact that your business is creating or that you are creating for others around you? And how are you inspiring others in order to take the economy forward?
Yeah,
right?
super cool.
Yeah. So that's just something that we can use, but this is all you, right?
Yeah.
So that's a journey into you being a founder. So tell us a little bit. So we've heard about how you started off from IT to supply chain, leveraging and honing your skills of project management through it, then going into HR, a space you've never been into before, then going into founding Vividh. So now, and starting Vividh, tell us, how is it being a founder now? Tell us the truth, the absolute truth.
It's hard. It's difficult. It's not something that I can say to everyone, go do. It's different. It's very different. So when I say that, especially when you come from corporate world, in corporate, you're getting measured in a system that exists. And you can be measured on that. You can probably work through that system. When you're a founder, you are the system. So everything you do, all your insecurities, all your weaknesses, I wouldn't say weaknesses, you're even better ifs, all your things you're great at are on your face 24/7. You wake up with them, you go to sleep with them, you even probably dream about them if you're obsessive as I am. And you are constantly on the case and it's always you. And, you do get some satisfaction, you do get some rewards from when people around you in the corporate world will say, oh, that's a great presentation. Or when you delivered a keynote, oh, that was really powerful. You get that really quick validation really quickly. You do not get that as a founder. You do not get that when you're selling to a client where a client's got a next meeting after your training session or you've done a keynote, they're all got to go to another meeting. They don't have time to give you that immediate validation or that immediate feedback straight away. So it's very different. And it isn't easy. It's not something which I would say is, it's hard. You're not getting income every day, every month, like you would in a salaried job. You are looking for your next visionary thing after 6 months. You can't just live for the now. You do have to think it's a business. It needs to grow. We need
Correct.
to build. So it's not, and you also have to validate what are you doing is it based on your values or is it based on financials? And so there's a lot of things you have to think about when you're a founder or a CEO or whatever. But in that space, especially when it's your own baby, which Vivid is, it is very difficult. Very, very difficult. It's not easy.
I understand that. And that's something that's coming more and more to light, given that we have more founders
Yeah.
in the space
Yeah.
today, especially amongst Gen Z.
Mm.
I was reporting a statistic earlier in another episode that I have with someone really interesting who everybody will know about, and so will you, is that there are approximately 20% of Gen Z who want to be moving from corporate into starting their own entrepreneurial
Yeah.
journey, which has risen up from the number that was there previously from the millennial generation. There is a trend around you having the name of your name and you being a
Mm-hmm.
founder of
Mm-hmm.
XXX.
Mm-hmm.
But as glamorous as the title is and appealing as it is also tough. But here we are trying to equip the people who are listening to this.
Yeah.
So, realistically, how would you still guide someone? Now that you've put it out there,
Mm.
it's a hard journey.
Mm.
So, don't be fooled. It's not
Yeah.
glamorous. But what can you give in terms of a snippet of what they should know when they're starting this and going about it?
So things I learnt from myself, which I don't think I had strong amount of ideas of myself, would be what are you trying to sell? What is that you're trying to really bring different to the world of the markets you're looking at? I would say that was one of the things which I was like, oh, I'll work it out as I go along. I had three things. I believe in power of three all the time. I had three things. I said, these are three things I'm going to go do. And that's the business plan. And the business plan was driven on all those three things. As I was talking to more and more clients, as I was talking to more and more people, I then realized, oh, I think I need to do more things or a little bit different to this stuff, or maybe I should do this. So it's really what I mean, you're not going to have the perfect business plan, that's for sure. And it's stupid to think that you would. I know people say, oh no, you have to have the real outlook of business. You're not. It's never going to be the case. You will adapt and change. You have to, and it's life and you have to do that. Also, I would say the other thing I would say is don't be so obsessed with the organization and the brand that you created. Yes, it's your baby. Yes, it's everything that you're trying to achieve it with. But at the end of the day, you're trying to make money and you are trying to make it into a business. So, how can you make this into a business? And also knowing that you have to think about the money aspect. It can't just be a feeling. It can't be like, oh, I'm a CEO. Oh, I'm a founder. That feeling is not going to feed you, unfortunately. That feeling is not going to make your business successful. It's actually what are you providing is going to make you successful. So I would say those are the two things I would always say. The third thing I would say is it's lonely. So I didn't know how lonely it was when I was in it. What I then did was I started talking to other founders and creating a network for myself to not feel lonely. That is one thing I would say to anyone starting up because it is a very lonely world. If you've not got a co-founder, if you've not got someone, if you're doing it yourself, it's just you. You're talking to yourself every day. You're speaking to clients by yourself every day. If you've got no one working under you, it's just you as an individual. It's a lonely world and you're going to be some silent days. There's going to be some silent gaps. You need to keep that energy and you need to keep the ideas, the inspiration, keep on growing. The only way you're going to do that is by having other people that you can talk to. So I've created a really great network where I speak to loads of founders and all different founders. They're not in the same field as me, but then also knowing that if something's not working in a particular market, it's not just me, they're also facing it too. And it's like, how do we support one another as well? So that's another thing I always say to people.
That's good to know because at this point of time, we need to stop glamorizing being
Yeah.
a founder, like you
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
but also accept help and seek help
Yeah.
very, very actively when you're on that journey,
Yeah.
nevertheless.
In the help part, I've got a business coach now. So I didn't have a business coach. As someone that was giving it to me as a nice favor, to be honest, and very blessed that they were. Then they gave me a lot of great direction. But now I've decided that to make it to where I need to get to, I need a business coach, and I need someone to really help direct me and really help me feel accountable for things again, just to get my vision again online. So yeah, I think you need the help, you need the support, you have to do it.
I'm really, really glad, Karan, that you mentioned this point,
Yeah.
because something I personally very much advocate for and I share with those who I'm either having a conversation with or mentoring is that a mentor or a coach, depending on the situation that you're in, will absolutely help take you to much greater levels than you would have otherwise struggled in figuring
Mm-hmm.
out yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are certain types of different types of value that you would get depending on your what your goal is at that moment of time. Yes, probably there might need to be an insight as to when you use a coach, when you use a mentor, maybe not for today, but if someone needs it, that would then help them to reach out. And then I always say that never be afraid to reach out to someone who you potentially might think would be a good fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
Just seek help.
Mm-hmm.
And there are not many people who would say no when being asked for help.
And that's the beauty of it. You'll be surprised how many people say yes. People are so nice,
Yes.
especially in the founder world. People are so supportive. They're so nice, and they always want to help you connect and network. And I think being a coach myself, and I see the benefit when I coach people. But actually having it yourself, it's just something different. And you should always reach out for help if you
Yes.
can. And there's no, and I'm speaking to everyone listening in as well, that if they need support, please reach out, because there's no harm in having a conversation. There's no harm in just saying, oh, I really want to learn from what your mistakes were. What did you do that didn't work? And how can I make it not the same as that and learn from that? It's beauty in that in itself.
So we've talked a lot about your journey, your lessons that you've learned through the journey, the reality of this, right? But I want to leverage on your expertise, which comes from Vivid,
Mm-hmm.
is that your knowledge of people and your knowledge of teams. You have admittedly been a part of multiple boardrooms with senior leaderships and C-suite executives where you're advising them on how the culture should be shaped.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say that there is already a founder who is in the early to mid-mature stages of their journey and have already started scaling their startup by hiring more people on their team. Now, these people don't necessarily have a budget to probably take on somebody like yourself. It's, let's be honest, secondary for them to think about it. So let's help those startups here today if they're listening in. Now, I have a statistic here and I'll pull that up real quick, but what I want to get into is what CB Insights in 2023 had stated is that building the right team is critical to a startup success. 23% of startups that failed attributed their demise to issues within teams. And some common problems that came up were a lack of complementary skills amongst founders, internal conflicts that distract from priorities that help to operationally run the business, hiring the wrong people in key roles, such as in your sales teams or technology teams if you're a tech company. There is also another good statistic by MIT Sloan Management Review in 2022, which stated that poor workplace culture is 10 and a half times more likely to contribute to an employee quitting. And there are three elements of toxic work culture that leads to this: failure to promote diversity, workers feeling disrespected, and unethical behavior. The reason I pulled up these statistics is going to come to my question. For these mid mature startups or early startups that have a team of 4 or more, how would you recommend them to create their culture internally within the company?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's to your point where it's always going to be considered to be secondary, because the main goal is to make money, is to get out there. Come on, we need to get money in. We have to build our business stronger. And actually, yes, of course, that still should be your main goal. Of course, you need to run a business; it needs to bring the money in, but it's the people that bring the money in for you. It's the people that make your business thrive. It's the people that make the new ideas come in. It's the people that do everything for you to be successful. That can't be done without the people. And if you've got building, you're building more and more, you're building a bigger organization, you're adding more people in. If you're not going to be creating a culture that includes people and makes people feel like they belong and it's a psychological safe one, your cultural gap is going to be the one you've created, which is not going to be a very good one, and it's going to be a very toxic one. So how do you make sure, as founders and anyone that's starting and their business is scaling upwards, is, as a founder, what's the core of your business? The core of your business is selling you, and what are your personalities in that business? You need to really trickle that through. That if that's the personality you want to have, and that's a culture you want to build, and you really want to build a team of success, The only way you're going to do that is really starting all the time talking about psychological safety, making sure it's safe, making sure people feel like they belong. That's how you start any organization off. That trickle then becomes a value. That value then is your business, and that will always trickle through no matter when you're recruiting, no matter when you're going out there, when you're building more, when you get more and more employees coming in, that value will remain the same. Once you let go of that value, your business is going to start becoming toxic. Your business is going to start not becoming safe. You're going to then add the cultural gaps to allow others to build different narratives in to stop you being
Mm.
inclusive. That's the struggle. And look, there's a lot of diagnostics. There's a lot, I mean, I'm giving a very high level way of doing it, but there is a lot of diagnostics that can be done within that space, even for startups that, can't afford really expensive consultancies, but even conversations they can have with people that have done inclusion correctly and how they can start the foundation correctly. What can you do? How can you do that? But I would always say if your value in your organization is to make people feel like they belong, which it should be for every organization. And if you're starting organization, why wouldn't you want your people to feel like they belong to make more money for you? You would. Because if you've got people that are creating new ideas, if you've got people that are creating new thoughts, if you've got new people doing things for you, that's giving you more streams of revenue coming in, why would you not do it? So I think that's where every founder needs to click on first is the goal is to bring money in. How do I bring money in? Is making people feel like they belong. If people feel like they belong and they're psychological safe, I'll make more money. Simple.
I like the way you put that loop together.
Yeah.
It is a loop,
It's a
isn't
loop.
it?
It's a loop. You can never be success. And these are where the big corporates are learning now, especially with a lot of the pause that's happening. But the big corporates are learning that if you're not inclusive, you're not got a psychological safe environment and you're not got a feeling of belonging, you are not going to be making more money. It's as simple as that.
Karan, my last question to you, and I promise last one, is you've shared a lot about your own journey
hmm
and also your perspectives on how different organizations thrive when it comes to putting people at the forefront, organizations and startups. You've also shared how a person can not, I don't want to use thrive yet,
Yeah.
but at least start getting into the stages of being a founder, or rather even understanding if that this is the journey that they want to go for. My last question to you and to close this off would be, how would you recommend someone take this through, or what is one lesson or one takeaway that someone should take away from this episode and your conversation and your story?
I definitely feel the thing which I've taken away, and I tell everyone the same, is if you think you can do it and you really believe you can do it well and you've got the ambition to achieve it, do it. Just take that risk. I think so as you said, right, a brown person in a country where my parents have come from different countries into one country, there's always that financial risk. That's all that burden that we build up within our generation as well. That we're thinking, oh, well, we can't take a risk because we need the financial stability, we need the basic stuff. So I think that feeling has always been within me as well. That thinking, right, well, the financial stability needs to be a really strong one. But I generally feel if you can make it work and you've really got the passion and you've really got the energy, just take the risk and do it. And I will always say this, that even if it doesn't work out, it's not a failure because you've learned something. Now, even if I go back to corporate world or if I go into anywhere else, it's never going to be a failure for me because I've learned so much in 2.5 years that I would never have learned in my entire life if I hadn't done this step. I've learned how to do networking properly. I've learned how to do speaking to C-suite levels and sell myself. I'm working in big global organizations. Like all of these things as an organization as Vivid, I would never have thought I could achieve if I didn't try it.
Yes,
And I always think that that's the beauty of it. I think if you don't try it, you don't know. And if fine if you try and it doesn't work out, but you've learned. It's fine. You've learned something from it. So you're never going to go back to corporate. You're never going to go back a step. You're always going to keep growing forward.
absolutely.
So I think that's the thing I would say. Take the risk and do it. See what happens. Simple as
I love that.
that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Karan, thank you so much for
Oh,
bringing a
thank
lot of
you.
honesty, a lot of clarity, and just grounded insights into what it means to be in a space of where someone else would be taking this as a project, but you're taking this head on and saying, let's make this something more. It's very interesting, at least for me, to learn about the value that you're creating. So thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing it with all of us.
Thank you so much for having me. And I also want to just add, I love what you're doing. I love the fact that you're helping others. Keep at it. I can't
Yeah.
wait to see this podcast be an absolute success.
Thank you very much. But before we even get to that, what I did was I summarized a few of the tidbits of the learnings that we can give just to wrap up, right?
Yeah.
So let's see. A few things to take away from today's episode is never doubt the themes and the skill sets that you build over time, because that might help you in different directions, whether that's IT or supply chain or different companies that you work for. Always be confident in the value that you bring. There's a certain sense of hard work that you put into something, but there's also a certain sense of luck that plays in terms of timing that is there, but also with your charismatic attitude and the person and the energy that you bring to the table. So always ask, what do you bring apart from your skills, apart from timing, experience? What do you bring? There's a certain sense of value that you create, or there's always opportunity to create more value. Even if there are businesses that are existing for it, there might be a space that you can still operate in. So if you want to find something of your own and start your entrepreneurial journey, have a think and a reflection about what that value is. And this connects very well what you mentioned midway through the episode, power of three. Think about it in terms of three things that you can bring onto the table. I would even encourage by starting with one. Grit is important, as Karan mentioned in his own journey about going through different sets of phases of your life and different hardships, but they will always bring a good positive outcome. If not today, then certain years, months, days along the line. You won't necessarily see it now, but when the time comes where you're facing an adversity or problem, do come back to your inner self and let your grit lead you with the way. We mentioned about value can be created not necessarily through numbers, but you as a business owner or you being in corporate, if you're always questioning as to how can I create value and measure that, there are 4 different ways. If you can't measure it by numbers, Karan just mentioned his. So we broke that acronym down to VVIP. So what is the value of the network and hence that network bringing in for you or the work that you do? What is the visionary approach that you have that you bring onto the table that hence translates into some value? How can you inspire people on the table? And that's something that you can probably measure. And lastly, inspiration is the last one. The inspiration that you also can create for others who are probably going to follow your footsteps in this journey. And lastly, if you are a startup operating in this space, you have a goal of making money, but equally, if you create psychological safety for the people around you and the people that you work with, you in turn create more money. And that's the loop that I will leave you to trademark with the name if you'd like. But that's the loop that we're calling about startup people multiplier. For today, let's use that. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to the key
No, I think
takeaways.
that's beautiful. That's really nicely summarized.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Karan,
Cheers,
again.
thank
And
you.
thank you, everybody. And we'll see you in the next one.